In 2022, I sat my A-level economics papers and I received an A star. In terms of the marks I achieved, in paper 1 I got 78 out of 80, in paper 2 I got 69 out of 80, and in paper 3 I got 73 out of 80. And being able to achieve an A star in A-level economics with these marks would not have been possible without the tips and advice I'm going to give you today. Now the first thing to talk about, which is a massive thing in terms of all exam preparation, is past papers. Now I really can't emphasise how important past papers are to you succeeding in your exams, but for economics you might want to go about them slightly differently. Now for my other subjects, so like maths, further maths and physics, it was very easy for me to do past papers and mark them and clearly see where I was working at. However, for economics, the mark schemes that come along with these past papers are usually a bit more difficult to self-mark from. Thus, what I would recommend is asking a teacher or teachers to mark the past papers that you're doing. What I found with my experience in sixth form is that the majority of the time, teachers are very willing to do this. This is so helpful. It alleviates self-marking stress from you, and it also lets you truly see where you're working at. And the reason why economics past papers are hard to mark is that the mark schemes don't clearly tell you what you should or should not write. And that's because they can't really, because it's an essay-based subject, so there's lots of things you could write, but you're not expected to write them all, so it's hard to self-mark from. For example, here's a mark scheme from an AQA A-level economics paper. As you see, it's just a list of things that could be said. It's very hard for a student to self-mark without having experience in the marking process. So that's my first point. Do lots of past papers and get your teachers to mark them if possible. Now the second thing I want to talk about is time management. Now this is more practical advice for the actual exam itself, rather than advice for the whole course. Now I found that economics exams are the most time pressured out of all my exams. For all my economics exams, all 3 papers, which were 3 hours long, I was writing for at least an hour 55 of those 2 hours. But the way to master time management is to be strict with yourself. Allocate a specific set time for each question and stick to it. Obviously, in the exam there could be a bit of wiggle room. For example, some essays just naturally have more to say than others. However, it's really important to not let the time run away from you in order to achieve those top grades in the exam. After all, even if you've answered every question really well, if you haven't answered all the questions, it just limits yourself in terms of achieving those top grades. And a good way to master this time management links with point 1. So do lots of past papers in timed conditions. By doing the past papers in timed conditions, you can see what the real exam will be like, and this will really help you work on your time management. The third thing is those big essay questions. Now these might be 25 markers or 20 markers. Either way, they're the biggies in these economic exams. Luckily for you, I've done a whole other video on how to get full marks on an economics essay, which you can watch up here. But to give you a brief overview, the things I would say is have a good introduction, evaluate loads, really focus on evaluation, and make a judgment at the end. Now the fourth thing I want to talk about is active recall and flashcards. Now unfortunately, your answers to the questions asked in these economics exams is limited if you do not have sufficient knowledge of the things you're being asked about. So even if you have great exam structure, great exam form, if you don't actually know the things you're talking about, that will just limit you. Thus, it is so important to make sure you're building up that bank of economic knowledge, which I believe is best done through active recall and flashcards. For first year economics, I did all my flashcards on paper. For second year, I did them all on Brainscape, but it was so helpful for me in terms of building that knowledge. Now there are 2 key points to be successful with both active recall and flashcards. The first is to make your flashcards throughout your 2 years. Don't leave it to the end of year 13 to start making your flashcards. Make them as you're learning the content, and then when you come around to revising, all your content's there for you to revise. This way, it relieves so much stress at the end of year 13 if you're trying to make flashcards instead of actually just going through them. And the second thing is to use your flashcards consistently. So yes, you should make your flashcards throughout the whole 2 years of year 12 and 13, but you should also be using them throughout the whole 2 years. Don't just make them all and then leave it to March, April time to start going through them. Go through them the whole 2 years. Keep on top of it. Now luckily for you, I have made my second year economics flashcards fully available on Brainscape, which you can get with the link in the description. But just note, this is only for second year AQA. First year I did on paper, so these are incomplete. Now the next thing is to master question structure. Luckily for you, there aren't that many types of questions in A-level economics. For example, for me, for AQA economics, it was 1 mark multi-choice questions, 2 mark questions, 4 mark questions, 9 mark questions, 15 mark questions, and 25 mark questions. That's only 6 types of questions, and each individual type of question is answered the same way no matter how the question's phrased. For example, the 2 marker is always a calculation, the 4 marker is always an explain, and the 25 marker is always an evaluative essay. So master these question structures, know them inside out, and know what you have to do in order to achieve the mark for each type of question. And if you're unsure, just ask your teacher what you need to do in order to get the full marks in each type of question. What's more, you can literally just look on your exam board specification and it will give you specific things of what you need to get each type of mark, whether it's just knowledge needed, evaluation, analysis, etc. So what I'd say is learn how to answer each type of question and then practice doing them in timed conditions to master them. And finally, real world examples. Now this just adds so much depth to your essay if you can bring in some real world examples or real world statistics. For instance, if you can bring in examples of when monopoly power has been good and when monopoly power has not been good, this could be really useful in adding depth and analysis and evaluation to your essay. Furthermore, being able to bring in some macro statistics is really useful. For example, things like the UK's inflation rate, its unemployment rate, the level of national debt, etc. These really add depth to your essays and your answers. And that's it. Those are my 6 key points to really help you achieve those top grades in your A-level economics. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.